You're listening to a Galactic Network podcast. For more, go to gncast.com.
We are the ElseNerds.
Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Network. I'm Gregor Sprague, and joining me is Corey Scott. And real quickly, before we begin the show, you can find info on this show, including show notes and subscription links, by going to ElseNerds.com. And for other Galactic Network programs, go to GNcasts.com. And as a warning on ElseNerds, we tend to shoot our mouths off without thinking, so we will both spoil things and swear liberally. You have been warned. Corey, how you doing, sir?
I'm all right, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Like, work is going fine. I'm at this, like, where I'm not working a lot, but where I'm not, like, oh, I'm only working 3 days a week. So, and it gets real weird when some people complain about the fact that, like, they don't have hours, and I'm like, I have hours and I make more than you. I'm just going to sit over here and shut up.
That is sort of how seniority goes.
Not even seniority. Not even. They hired me. They hired me based on
invisible
experience.
Seniority. You bring in the people that you rely on more. You give them more pay to keep them happy, and you give them more hours to keep them from looking for jobs somewhere else where they could possibly make even more money. Yeah, you've been to this job now. I mean, in one way or another.
Yeah.
For how long?
So, and I just had someone else ask me about this today too, to possibly do like one of those. What is it? I swear, I think it's a pyramid scheme, because he's like, yeah, I retired at 29 and all that. And I'm like, so I gave him my number, but then he sent me a text message later. I'm like, my pyramid scheme senses have gone up, so I'm gonna just block the number. So if he's a viewer, sorry. I doubt he's a viewer because he didn't know me.
I had a guy when I worked at the outlet mall, and it's the same thing. It's being trapped in retail. People come up and just want to tell you about their lives and stuff, and you're kind of, I don't want to say stuck, because I've certainly had a lot of great conversations with people when I worked retail that were very fun, interesting times, and I probably should have concentrated a little bit more on doing my actual fucking job. But I did have somebody when I worked at the outlet mall as a manager of one of the stores, one of my jobs, that came in all the time and kept going on and on about this business thing. And I don't think I really knew much about what pyramid schemes were at the time, but it was just constantly like, oh, you got to get in on this thing. You got to get in on this thing. And finally, one day I was just like done dealing with it. I was over the fact of trying to be nice to this person anymore, because he was pressuring me. He was like coming down hard on me. Like I hadn't put enough into this blossoming relationship and everything. And I'm like, dude, one, I don't even know you from Adam. Second of all, my life is kind of fucked up. I don't have any money. I don't know what tree you're barking up, but I'm basically a fucking pole. And third, go eat shit. Just like,
yeah. So and the dude was really nice. You should listen to this like 2 or 3 minute call. Like, if you think, I'm like, yeah, I've been here before. Yeah, I'm sitting down. All right, yeah, cool. And so I gave him my number mainly because I couldn't think of a fake number. I need to create a Google Voice number for that shit.
No, you just say, hey, man, I work for a corporation. They're not really cool with me giving out my private info to people and having these kind of conversations when I'm on the clock. So, and
if I had thought about that at the time, it probably what I would have said. And
that's the thing, is it comes with experience of being in retail and dealing with things like that. You don't want to make them feel like an asshole, especially as a customer. You don't want to piss them off, but you also don't want to create a expectation that anything they follow up with is going to be cool with you, because that's just it. Sometimes the hard no is the nicer way to go.
Yeah.
And you can do a hard no without being a prick about it, but it's like, I don't want to waste your time. And it's not about, you bugging me, although it better not ever fucking get to that. But just realistically, I'm not your target. You go move on to something else. This is not my thing. Enjoy. Penis pumps are totally not my bag, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the sort of the thing, is like, I was like, whatever. If I see him again and he was like, so I tried calling you and all, I'd be like, yeah, sorry, I had my phone off before work because I was hanging out with people and all that. I was hanging out with family and stuff. And hopefully he's not there with his family because that's the part that sort of gets me. It's like where I become uber polite and be like, yeah, sorry, wasn't really interested. I didn't want to say anything in front of your family and all that, but sorry.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes people use their kids for that kind of thing.
Well, his kid's like 16 years old, though, and like, God, almost as tall as I am, and so I'm like,
But the I put up the barrier of like, oh no, man, my kid's right here. You can't say no to me in front of my kid, right? I got to look cool for my fucking young ones. But yeah, so I get it. But so you said you've been at the company for how long now?
So altogether, so full disclosure, I work for Target. I was there since August, and then the August before, so 2016 was when I was Target Mobile doing the cell phones. So almost 2 years, like getting close to 2 years here.
Yeah, and I remember when we started, neither of us had jobs.
Yeah, neither of us had jobs, and I went to that soul-sucking place of Dollar General,
which was still it's good entry point. It got you experience. It got you to move up to the next thing.
It wasn't soul-sucking until the boss that basically was the reason why I quit got in there.
Right. It's not a reflection of Dollar General as much as a reflection of somebody that they hired that was above you.
Yeah.
But good for you though, because you have been at this for a couple years now, and you were at that for a while before that, and it's nice to see you. It seems like having spending money helps. Your confidence seems to have gone up. Just in general, you seem like happier, and that's why I wanted to mention it is because we talk about your job. We usually open the show with your job and stuff, but I just wanted to say, as a friend, I'm really proud of you for all that you've been accomplishing.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, and it's because, and mainly I open it up because some of the shit is funny. Like, so to go, and this is probably where I will end the personal stuff, because I got extra money coming in, or that came in today because of the taxes that I filed, or my mom filed for me. It's where I got a refund, and I went and bought some things for improvement of what I will call the studio, the ElseNerds North studio. Because I think I'm further north than you. And one of the things I did is I'm like, it's not that I hate my smartwatch. It was, yeah, I spent all that sweet Patreon money, not, and that's mainly because I don't have my own Patreon page. I upgraded / got a new smartwatch. So I got the Samsung Gear S3 Classic. I actually think I might look for a bigger watch band, because this is the large, and on the S2, I was like, okay, I can get 3 notches in. This one, I think I'm only getting 2. I'm barely getting 2 in, and I feel like if I were to work, like sweat and stuff, it'd be like, I can't get this off. I'm gonna have to cut it, sort of deal. So I might look for. Actually, I might talk to my friend, see what watch band he got.
But you're pretty in on the Samsung stuff at this point.
Yeah, the Samsung stuff is pretty cool. But the cool thing is it looks like an actual watch. It looks more like a watch than it does a smartwatch, because it's got this, the nice metal, like around it. The bezel is it looks more like the bezel that you would see on a watch. Everything about this looks fancy.
Yeah, smartwatches needed some time to get a mix of both functionality and fashion, and it seems like one would score with one or the other, but not both, and it's taking a little while. I'm still not quite there on what a smartwatch would do for me, but I appreciate the ideas, and I'm using my Fitbit, which is just a basic thing, and it's telling me to take my steps every hour, and I go and I walk around the facility that I work at. So I'm trying, it's minimal effort, but that's fine.
That's sort of what this will do, but it's in the Samsung ecosystem,
right?
So, because I know you have the Note 8, right?
No, I have a Pixel XL.
Yeah, that's right. You have the Pixel XL. With this, it does the same thing. It'll tell me, like after an hour, hey, basically move, FedEx, or which it does it sometimes in car rides, other times not. It never does it with my mom driving. I wonder why. No, but it's because of the heart rate thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll do like, you're at a resting heart rate for too long. Move, FedEx. But then it'll do the opposite. So if I start working out, or I'm running around, or I'm fat and talking hard, gets my heart rate up to that goal. It's like, you're exercising, yay! And stuff like that. I've had
that's
that
a really hard thing with these bands is that it's like it thinks you're exercising when you're not really doing much of anything, and you feel really pathetic. It's like this is what it took.
Yeah.
I am gonna die.
I've gotten like I'm pretty sure if I wore that while recording, it would go off because like I talk with my hands, so I don't know if it's doing that motion tracking that way. Which sorry, I had a horrible joke that you could probably think of really quick that I was gonna say, but I'm like, oh no. But when I'm at work and I'm talking about like the TVs or something, and I'll feel it, and I'll look, it's like, good job, fatty. I'm like, oh, thank you. I'm fat. I'm out of shape. Sort of deal. But no, so I got that and bought some parts for my PC. There's a few other things that I'm looking at getting here too. Just because it's like it's one of these things like I have money, a little bit of money, so it's like I want to improve some things.
Well, being podcasters and being podcast fans, we all want that dream setup. We all want a Scott Johnson Frog Pants studio or a Jury mobile studio, something that it's like it looks pro, it sounds pro, it's putting your best voice forward, and while we also rely on shit that will just fuck you up for you anyways, thanks Hangouts, it's fine, but you still want to you want that next level thing, and I would like to improve not just what the shows look and sound like, but my portion of doing the work for it. I don't have a mixer or anything to record shows. My setup is very basic. So it'd be nice that if I could pick up the slack on a week that you're not feeling well and I do a solo show or something, or I bring in a guest, to be able to do that. And that's the hope of the one day for me. But we talk about the Galactic Network Patreon and what that does for the production company itself, the distribution and all that for Dave and everything. And that's all fine. And we're not looking for anybody to bankroll us. But we all do have our own portions of things that we would like to invest in to make our individual shows better for our audience and for ourselves. It's a personal pride thing too. Matt has pretty much put everything into doing Podcasts of Terror. He upgraded his mixer not too long ago. He's upgraded his computer a couple of times to keep things up. We have both shows have looked at going over to Twitch. And trying to make that kind of work because that seems to be a better live experience. Although we love Growly hanging out with us every week, and I'm sure Growly would come with us to Twitch because I see him on there. But it would be a different kind of category. Yeah, and I think that's something that we all hope for and we all work towards. It's just some of us have to keep the fucking roof over our heads too.
Yeah, and that's like basically the big thing right now. Like with me is because it's. I'm 29 years old, still living with my mom and all that. So it's like, it's all these things that are
you have disposable income.
Yeah. It's like, like they're pulling at me and stuff like that. Not just disposable income, because it's also the, wanting to save up money to where I am, when I do meet someone and I, things get serious, I'm not like, all right, so we're going to live with my mom until we can save up enough money to get an apartment or whatever. Cause that ain't ever going to be good.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity to invest in something like a 401k, especially if there's an employee matching thing, do that early as you can, as much as you can, because that's the stuff that going forward, the long term, you're going to feel the effects really, really fast, and it helps. It helps you buy a house. Having that, we didn't even have to borrow against our 401ks, but we both had them, and that helped us in buying our home. Long run, fucked us, but that's because buying a home was stupid. In Michigan, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And as you get older and you get towards retirement and stuff, that's the stuff that's going to make up for whatever the state of Social Security and stuff is going to be at that point. Yeah. So always invest in your future, always invest in yourself. And especially if you can get an employee match of 3%, 5%, whatever, or even if they match half, take every single cent that they will match at least and give that value. But if you can do more, one, it brings your taxes down, and because you're living at your mom's house, you're getting most of your tax stuff back anyways. Just it's one of those things that I feel like younger people don't realize. I have a friend that I worked with at Best Buy who used that money for beer money when all the people that he worked with at the lawyer's office that he was at were investing in other stuff and stocks and everything. And they all got to retire millionaires, and he had a beer gut.
Yeah, but no, so I mean, yeah, definitely. And this has been Life Advice by Corey. Sorry, I felt like that had to be said. Because as a smooth transition over to the news, because hey, we talk about the news sometimes. Now this one, it's an homage to your other show, Corey, your other wife over there besides your actual wife, Erin, with Podcast of Terror. This is Mike Flanagan is going to direct Stephen King's The Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep. Now, I'm not a huge horror movie fan, as told. I'll get to the joke before you can, Corey. As told by my last appearance on Podcast of Terror, where we talked about The Nightmare Before Christmas. I apologize.
No, we didn't. We talked about Edward Scissorhands.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, Edward Scissorhands. Sorry, Nightmare Before Christmas probably would have been better. God damn it!
It really wouldn't have. Yeah. So, and I've always say that I'm a horror fan, second to my wife, who is the real horror fan. So one thing that should be said first: neither of us have read Dr. Sleepless by Stephen King. I think I've listed a number of times the 3 books that I've read by Stephen King. One was Eyes of the Dragon. Second was most of the first book of the I think the Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger. I never quite finished it off. And then the third one was his book about writing, Stephen King on writing. I love on writing. I enjoyed Eyes of the Dragon when I read it as a kid, but everybody always said this is nothing like any of his other books. And I can't remember fuck all about The Gunslinger. But I thanks to my wife, I've seen The Shining way too many goddamn times because it seems like it was always on. I haven't watched the documentary about it on Netflix that I would like to check out at some point because I'm more interested in that. It's probably kind of important to say that I'm not a big Kubrick fan either, but I know that they did a TV miniseries version of The Shining with Steven Weber that I haven't been able to see, and I hear is more true to the book than Kubrick's version with Jack Nicholson. I can't think of her name right now. But this is from Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan did a movie that I really enjoyed on Netflix called Hush, which we reviewed on Podcast of Terror kind of early on. He also did Oculus, which I didn't like as much. It seemed like the ending was a little too obvious to me. He did a Ouija movie. So he's been in the horror genre. And a few years ago, Stephen King did what was a sequel to The Shining about Danny, I believe, as a grown-up called Dr. Sleepless. And
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so how is this going to work as a movie? Is it going to be referential to The Shining that most people have seen and know?
So here's my question for you on that one. When did that Shining come out?
That Shining came out in the 70s.
In the 70s?
Yeah.
So in theory, that the actor who played Danny Torrance,
sorry, 1980.
So that he would be in his 40s. So you could, in theory, do because as it says here with the synopsis is basically the Dr. Sleep follows Stephen King wrote it in 2013, and it picks up the life of Danny Torrance now in his 40s. He's struggling with the same demons of anger and alcoholism that plagued his father. So you could, in theory, get someone who is in their 40s.
Danny Lloyd, who played Danny in the movie, is actually 2 years younger than me, or a year and a couple months. But he was born in 1973, January 1st, 1973. But he hasn't acted since 1982. He did The Shining. He played a young G. Gordon Liddy in an autobiography of him. And that's it. He hasn't done anything else. So I don't know that we're going to get him back. It seems like he's made his decision not to do any more films. Shelley Duvall, who I keep thinking about, I don't know if she even survives.
But that's where we don't have to get him.
We don't have to get him. But that's the whole point of the book, is that, we can, if it's age appropriate and everything. The book, I think, was written probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
2013.
Okay, yeah. So I agree with that. I'm just saying that the selling point of the book was that it was the sequel to The Shining. The selling point to the movie, I feel like, is going to have to reference that original Shining movie. Because that's what more people know. They certainly don't know the miniseries from ABC. Mm-hmm. The problem is that, one, Stephen King didn't like the Shining movie. It was not very true to what his book was. He had a lot of arguments with what was done in it. It was a Kubrick film, not a Stephen King story film. But it did get him on the map and helped him get other stuff made and made him an even bigger name than he already was going to be with his writing. So he benefited from it. But that's like saying Alan Moore benefits from Watchmen. And should be proud that they made a movie of it. No, fuck that movie. And fuck DC.
So I look at, so I'm going to look at this from the an outsider's perspective here, because this is
The Outsiders was a totally different movie. That's C. Thomas Howell.
I know.
They go boy.
And hey, damn it, you beat me to it. Fuck you. But as a horror movie outsider, like hearing and seeing the news headlines of, like they're doing this reboot, and they're bringing in, like this person from the original and it's going to be in the original timeline, and Friday the 13th has, and the Nightmare on Elm Street have splintered out into so many different storylines. It seems like that it's like a tree, like a root system from a tree, to where it wouldn't be past me that it would be a sequel to the movie, because that's what everyone's going to know, but a loose sequel. So it's going to, follow the main plot, which I'm assuming the main plot of the movie is similar to the main plot of the book.
The main plot is that it takes place in the Overlook Hotel and has to do with ghosts and stuff, and maybe the descent in the madness of Danny's dad. What I like is that when you come back to a movie after 20, 30 years of being away from the property, is all the chances and stuff you can take with it. So I expect there's going to be a point in time where Danny's mother gets blown out of an airlock into space and then uses the Force to fly her way back in. And that will please the True fans. Much like everything does. No, and that's the thing. The Shining is beloved. Mm-hmm. Either you love The Shining book, or you love The Shining movie, or you love both. You can absolutely love both, or you can not give a shit about them. But it's such a beloved property, and there are so many expectations from both aspects of it. It's going to be one of those things that's hard to please true fans, and I'm throwing up air quotes here.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have an expectation of one or the other, and making that happen is not going to work. There are people who argue that the It movie that came out last year doesn't hold up because Tim Curry wasn't Pennywise in it. And Tim Curry was a great Pennywise on a very reasonable reproduction of that story on, again, an ABC miniseries. I don't think that he was the Pennywise from the book. I think that what they did in this movie was probably closer and far scarier, because it's a modern day horror film where they had an R rating and it could do a lot more. But it's still funny to me that as great as I think that movie is, and as much as I appreciate the miniseries before it, how many people argue against the new movie because, well, it's not Tim Curry, so it's not as good. And I love Tim Curry, and I get that. But it's the argument of you're shitting on my childhood, which everything that's new, versions of old things or continuations of old things, is somehow shitting on somebody's childhood. So that's basically what we produce here in Michigan, California, United States, wherever you're at in this country. It's just shit. We just produce shit all the time. We're a methane godland.
And that's the problem I have with that outlook on things, because it's the glass half full, half empty debate. If you say the glass is half full, generally you can, to quote Monty Python, you could always look at the bright side of life. Not going, oh, this next movie's going to suck.
Fuck you for bringing up Monty Python. Once Graham Norton died, the whole thing went to pot.
Yeah.
Speaking of pot, gncast.com/pot, you can hear all of your horror stories. Maybe at some point we'll actually do The Shining.
Yeah. But it's one of those that, like, then things are going to suck and you're just going to be, a dick and all that about things, when, I will agree, things that I like, they have plot holes. We were talking about this before the show. Valerian I love that movie. It has plot holes. It is like, and I will be the first to admit it. It is basically The Fifth Element. Like, the base plot of The Fifth Element is in here, but still, it's good to see. I was leery with Spider-Man Homecoming. because I'm like, okay, this is the third time since I've been a teenager that we are doing another Spider-Man property, with a new person as Spider-Man, and not even in the cool James Bond way, but just, well, we've had a spat with the director, let's recast, start from scratch, get this new, get someone else in here. Well, we got hacked, and the people involved are wanting too much money, or whatever the reason was, they decided against Amazing Spider-Man 3. So let's recast and go join Marvel. Yeah, I can be pessimistic, or I can look at it like, all right, how are they going to do this? Are they going to make it, are they going to make it better? Are they going to make it to where I love Spider-Man again? And they did. That's where I'm hoping with this is like, how are they going to fix? Because maybe this could fix some of the problems from the Shining movie that everyone had, problems with about, and even Stephen King.
Well, Stephen King had the problems with it. I don't know that many people had the problems with it. Over the years, they've built up because, they listen to Stephen King and believe in his side of things and stuff as the creator of the original story. Or, they just say, no, fuck it. Stephen King can't fucking finish a book to save his life. Everything just ends in some weird whacked out way. He writes great stuff for about 80% and then just fuck all at the end. So he's goddamn lucky that Kubrick made a good movie out of his shitty ass talent. Whatever your tastes, it is not for me to judge.
Yeah.
I just Mike Flanagan is doing stuff that is original and now deciding that this is something that he wants to do. Now it may put him into a higher echelon as a Hollywood director taking a big property like this, or maybe it's just like something that he absolutely loves. I just admire the balls to do the follow-up to one of Stanley Kubrick's, seminal films, and the balls to do a Stephen King adaptation when it's right now. Stephen King is a very hot commodity. So cool.
Yeah.
Good on him.
The next article here is that the producers of Gotham, hold on, wait for it, are teaming up for a Superman prequel series, Metropolis.
I love Superman. I can't wait to see a regular series of Superman on my TV screen week after week. That's awesome. I just was thinking the other day, like they should use Superman more in that Supergirl show, because Supergirl is on there and she flies around in the costume all the time. And I'm like, that's great. I dig Supergirl too. But Superman, man, he's my favorite. I want a show about Superman. And I know that they're already doing a show called Krypton. And I was like, well, goddamn, Superman can't be on Krypton because they all died. So a fucking Superman show taking place in his home city of Metropolis. That's great. Tell me more.
So it's executive produced by John Stevens and Danny Cannon. Cannon will direct the first episode as he did with Gotham. And the pilot will be written by them as well. So this is right now, from what I've seen, going to follow Lois Lane more. So
Lois Lane is Superman's girlfriend. That's cool. I'd expected to see her because she's there with Superman, right?
Wrong. As far as I can tell, wrong. So here's the other problem that we haven't hit on. It's not going to be on Fox. It's not going to be on CW. It's going to be on the DC branded digital service operated by Warner Brothers Digital Networks.
DC, they're the people who make Superman.
Yes.
Golly gee, mister. I can't wait for the Superman show.
Oh my god.
All right, so people who first of all wonder where that fucking Billy Batson came in from.
Yeah.
Wonder why do I detect a sense of facetiousness in Corey's tone? Yeah, you fucking do. Because it should have been given away to you from the very beginning. This is from the people who make Gotham. Gotham is great as a Batman show that has no fucking Batman. But just everything else in Batman's universe, not him. You know what you do after that? You say, well, I'm tired of just pissing on one side of the DC Trinity. Let's go for the next. So we're going to do a show, a second show. Let me rephrase this. A second show about Superman's world or allies, friends, enemies, whatever, without Superman. Because like I said, Krypton is coming out on Sci-Fi. It already doesn't feature Superman. Just all the stuff that happened before Superman got there. And now this new show, Metropolis, features Lois Lane and Lex Luthor teaming up against X-Files style sci-fi threats in their city before Superman shows up. Like, not like, oh, Superman's coming, he's going to be here in just 5 minutes. Fucking Jimmy just pressed the signal watch. No, none of that. It's everything that you love from Superman except Superman.
Yeah.
Because that's just the smartest thing to do ever. It just, let's keep doing it. And someone suggested on Bleeding Cool today, hey, why don't we get that show about the Kents? Just a long drive for 7 seasons down a dark road before they ever find a fucking rocket with a baby in it that came from outer space. Man, like, I know that there are people who like Gotham.
Mhm.
For whatever fucking reason. I could not get past the first season because it was just, honestly, the choices made by the show were just stupid to me.
Yeah.
Like dumb character motivations, dumb character plot stuff done week after week. The conceit of it's Batman without Batman is already one hurdle. And for a lot of people, it's one hurdle too many. I tried. I absolutely tried. But you get to a point where it's like, we're telling every story of like, fucking sure as shit, there's going to be a Brainiac on the show at some point. You know that there's going to be a Toy Man. There's going to be a Parasite. There's going to be all the things and stuff that you'd expect in an actual Superman show without Superman. We had Smallville. That at least had a fucking Clark Kent.
See, this is where I sort of come into with this too, because I will point out, not really full disclosure, but just to mention, head honcho of the network, Dave Nelson, is a big fan of Gotham.
Our friends over at Ink Geeks.
Yeah.
Big fans of Gotham. And I don't shit on him for liking it.
No, I'm just going to sort of join you in the shitting on the product that they like. And because you've hit on part of it. It's the reason why, because you mentioned like the character things, which is sort of where I was like, okay, this seems really dumb. The other part was you have a movie or a TV show about the time from when Batman's parents died. Like theoretically, if they were to do the Smallville approach to him finally donning the cape and cowl,
it would be about Bruce Wayne training to be Batman, which would be an interesting show. He'd travel the world. He'd do all this other stuff.
Yes. That's not what we got.
We got not at all what we got.
Yeah, we got little whiny bitch baby turned into, a couple seasons later they talked about they were following all the villains who you never really got, because another part was that I always mentioned is they were trying to say that you're going to see how the Riddler became the Riddler, when really all he did was he walked around with a mug, replacement this Captain America mug with a regular mug that has a question mark on it. It's like, oh, well, can you tell he's the Riddler? Here, let's, I'm stealing your bit from before here too.
From 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, from like 4 seasons ago.
Yeah. Here's part of the thoughts on this. One is that what they've built with that show, what they've made it into, the fact that people can enjoy the characterization, the fact that people can enjoy the craziness, the storylines, the Jerome as Joker thing, the relationship between Penguin and Riddler, it's all okay. I'm not saying that there's nothing to it to enjoy. What I'm saying is that it's still a weird step to take, that they keep going to this well of, what's great about Wonder Woman is not Wonder Woman. It's a show about all of the fucking people that work with Diana Prince later. But before she gets there was a joke, and it's probably a very non-PC joke now, but it was basically like some guys who all meet up and they're going to film a porn movie and they're just waiting for the women to get there. And one guy's like, well, let's just get started. And it's like, let's just start up and see what happens. When women show up, we'll bring them in. But let's just go to town. And well, no, but we're not doing a gay porn. Well, no, it's not a gay porn. The women are coming, but just before they get here, let's just warm up. Let's stretch a little bit. Let's. That's what this is. It's just like. It's a show that's about anticipation to something great or familiar, or the thing that you really like is going to happen, but it's not even a prequel about the character that you're expecting. If Supergirl was a show without Supergirl,
Yeah.
and it was all the other stuff, you'd be kind of hard pressed to say, why the fuck isn't this show called DEO, or why isn't this show called Martian Manhunter? Why is Supergirl a factor in it at all if it's about all these other things? I would absolutely enjoy a show about Lois Lane and having her be the focus of the show. I would enjoy a comic book about Lois Lane. Do you know I know that? Because as a kid, I read comic books that were about Lois Lane, that were her stories, that didn't have Superman in them at all. DC seems to forget that we used to have comics that weren't about those characters. You could have a Jimmy Olsen book. You could have a Lois Lane book. Be that as it may, I get the concept of doing that. But when your entire focus is, all this stuff exists before that thing you're expecting happens, then all you're doing is sitting there waiting for it to happen. It is like the world's longest, driest hand job. It's just like, but it's constant like, don't come yet. Don't come yet. I'll smack it if you do.
Talking about edging there.
Yeah, it's just like, and if you're trying to make an X-Files style show and it stars Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, just don't call him Lois Lane and Lex Luthor. You know what you could call it? Fucking X-Files. That show's around. I don't get it. I don't get this conceptually. And again, you use all the villains. You use Perry White. You get Jimmy Olsen. Oh, then we kill Jimmy Olsen. Oh wait, that was Smallville. To just like bastardize the whole story so that Superman, it just shows that your Superman, like Batman, doesn't matter. If there's not a Batman in Gotham, then Jim Gordon becomes the crazy fuck all Batman without the cape and cowl. If there's not a Superman in Metropolis, well then it's just everything's different. It's in ElseWorlds, and as an ElseWorlds, that would be something. But that's not how they're gonna say it. They're always gonna tease you with this idea that eventually there's going to be a Superman. Just like we waited for fucking 10 years or whatever on Smallville for a suit and cape. That was one flash of animated shit at the end. And, it kind of made it feel like, oh yeah, it was sort of not worth it at all. It wasn't worth it at all. It was a lot of bullshit. It was a lot of bullshit of seasons. Like, we had fucking more Supergirl than we ever had Superman in the show. What is wrong with these people? We had a Flash. We had an Aquaman who kept saying bra all the time. We had a Green Arrow show before there was a Green Arrow show. It was just, man, you just fucking do it at this point. We have the ability to have superheroes on TV. We have 5 successful, well, I mean, we're going to wait and see on Black Lightning, but I hope it's successful. 5 successful shows about superheroes on the CW, all DC heroes. Fucking do a Superman show if you want to do a Superman show. Otherwise, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. I'm calling it.
Yeah. Okay. You heard it here first, folks. Corey calls bullshit. The third and final story for the ElseNews is that Tom Hanks is set to play Mr. Rogers in the biopic You Are My Friend. This will be directed by Diary of a Teenage Girl director Marielle Heller and will be done through Sony's TriStar division. Now, the cool thing for this for me is the screenplay first appeared on 2013's Blacklist. The script thing, scripts that didn't get made, not the TV show. But the interesting part for me on this is it's not just like telling his life story or whatever. They're hitting it. They're going to focus in on Mr. Rogers' relationship with award-winning journalist Tom Junod, the cynical journalist, where he begrudgingly accepts an assignment to write a profile piece on the beloved TV icon and finds his perspective on life transformed. This, like we were talking about this in the pre-show, this is my childhood. Mr. Rogers, I grew up on that. It was, because we didn't always have cable growing up, because, I mean, mom, to her, I will applaud her now, because, she raised me and my sister by herself and all that. So, cable wasn't always a first priority until, she's like, there's a lot of good stuff on here. Let's get the cables. And she didn't talk like that. She heard me actually say that. She'd probably come in here and smack me. But we always had the over-the-air antennas where we would have PBS, and Mr. Rogers was one of them shows. It was Mr. Rogers, Arthur, which really pissed me off that they were doing those memes. I'm like, come on, man, it's a kid's show. Bill Nye the Science Guy, it was all like that was during the week, because PBS Kids, right when I got out of school, always had these shows on. It was Zoom, the reboot of Zoom that they had, Magic School Bus, all these things. And I'm like, and it was great. I loved it. I loved Mr. Rogers. So it's cool for me to see this movie because it's going to shed some more light on who he is, because a lot of people, I'm not going to say they're wrong for saying this, but they're always like, he was a little weird and creepy. I'm like, no, he just wanted to share kindness with people. This is a show that I don't think would have been made now. If he started when he started now, I don't think this would have lasted.
Well, it's from a more innocent time. It was from a part where kids could be entertained by puppets on TV. We didn't have a lot of the flashiness that stuff happens now. A little weird to me that this is being directed by the guy who did Diary of a Teenage Girl. Do you know that movie at all?
No.
It is a movie about a 15-year-old girl who embarks on an enthusiastic sexual odyssey, beginning with her mother's current lover. So right off the bat, anybody who wants to make a case of like creepy, you might have some ammo there. But realistically, Mr. Rogers was a very sweet-hearted man who taught kids about acceptance and creativity and exploring their imagination and stuff. I just hope this doesn't fuck with my plot, which was doing a movie version of Mr. Dress Up, but it goes along the lines of the talented Mr. Ripley. Still, I think that this is sweet. This is great. And Tom Hanks is like the sweetest man in Hollywood. We all love him. And I think that it makes really good sense that he would be the one chosen to play this part.
Yeah.
If not likeness, I think he could just do a really good job at it. It's the kind of thing that you just hear and you kind of imagine it in your head. And while it may not be exactly what comes out, you just feel a warmth swell.
Yeah.
That Grinch's heart through 3 sizes that day. And then he had to go see a doctor, and the doctor said, you have, onset heart disease. We have to operate, but your insurance won't cover it. And also your dog has cancer. Because I bring joy. I think this is cute. I think this is really sweet. It's much the same as if someone did a movie about the Bob Ross, art of painting stuff, which we're probably getting in Deadpool. But yeah, I think it's good. And I watched Mr. Rogers when I was a kid too. My era was a little bit before yours, so Mr. Rogers, Polka Dot Door, that sort of thing. But I got a lot of the Canadian shows in Michigan, and that's where we had the Gentle Giant and Mr. Dress Up and stuff.
But yeah, I mean, that's honestly where like I look at this, and like you're right. I do like everything about this. With the casting side of Mr. Rogers being played by Tom Hanks.
And it doesn't sound like it's a movie about Mr. Rogers, like we're following him around in his life. It's an interview movie. It's probably going to be more about the character who's interviewing him and his journey after and while getting to meet Mr. Rogers. Yeah,
definitely. I don't know. I'm so down with this, to be honest. I think this is going to be cool.
I think it's going to be really nice.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of those things that's going to come out around Christmas time, and everybody's going to go ooh and ah over it and see it on Christmas Day with their families.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
And nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. But yeah, so that is going to do it for the news. And before we get to the ElseView, we have a message for you. We mentioned it before. We're going to mention it again. We have a Patreon over at patreon.com/galacticnetcast. You go there, you could donate as little as you want, as much as you want. It doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it matters that you're donating, but we're not like, do it. Hey, do this. I'll put it to you this way. The more you donate, the more people donate, so share this with your friends. If you think they'll like, not even just the ElseNerds, but the Galactic Network as a whole, if there's a show on here that they would like, share it with them, share us with them. And then if they like it, tell them, hey, support them. Because then, the more money we get, the more that we can actually do this stuff that we love called podcasting, to where we can actually, you'll see us with, maybe some better equipment, maybe the ability to watch more things and stuff like that. And you can do that really simply by going to patreon.com/galacticnetcasts. You can also go over to gncast.com/support, which will have a link to the Patreon page. That's basically the big way you can help us out. And we would appreciate it if you did. Thank you. So it is time for the ElseViews, and this is the portion of the show where we talk about the things that we have been reading, watching, listening, doing other things too. And Corey, do you got something for us, or
just yeah? I kind of thought like what I was going to bring up this week. Many things that I watched during the holidays.
Yeah, real quick, I started listening to Charlie Bliss after your recommendation last week. Yeah, I love it. I love him, dude.
I really enjoy them a lot. and cool. This week I was listening to Childish Gambino.
Nice.
I don't listen to a lot of rap music in general, but of course, being Donald Glover, I wanted to give it a little bit of a more of a shot than I would normally do. And he's so incredibly talented, and I like a lot of his stuff, but it's still very different to me. But I want to spend a little bit more time with it. But that's not what I'm going to review this week. I don't know if you saw it. My wife and I, my wife especially, are pretty big fans of the Goldbergs.
Yes.
And this week they had, in place of the Goldbergs, and I don't even know if it was going to record, but I managed to catch it just in time anyways. They had the pilot for the spinoff, which I don't think they've even named. They just said the Goldbergs present a 90s special or something.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is what was going to be the 90s spinoff that followed the gym teacher and Tim Meadows' character.
Tim Meadows was the guidance counselor and becomes the principal of the school. And it has some of the other teachers who've been on the show, and a guest star is in there as the drama teacher. I don't know his name, but the guy from Broken Lizard who plays one of the teachers who's kind of abusive to all the kids.
Yeah, I can't think of his name either.
And then
Sekar Ramrod, that one. That guy.
Yeah. And then Ned from Groundhog's Day, who played the principal before, does the handoff to Tim Meadows' character. And Beverly Goldberg shows up in a couple of times too, because you have to have that handoff. It's about Tim Meadows takes over the school as the principal. It mostly revolves around his character and the gym teacher character. And then Tim hires his sister from the DMV to come to the school. I guess because I've never realized this before, it's a private school, and it would allow her to have her daughters be able to go to it for free. And it's told from the perspective of one of the daughters, who is more the troublemaker one, coming to the school for the first time, like in the way that the other one is told from the perspective of Adam, who's the youngest in that. And it's pretty base. It follows the same kind of structure of any Goldbergs episode, of the highs and lows of like, oh, we're doing this, and oh, we hit this misunderstanding, and oh, we take it way too far, and then we step back and we find our understanding of each other's feelings, and we work everything out. And it just, maybe because they copied the formula, it just felt kind of weak in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, and I've been rewatching the Goldbergs. They're on at 6 o'clock in the morning on Nickelodeon, I think, when I get up for work. And so I watch them over breakfast, and I like the show. I think that it's one of those things that if I rewatch it too much, I'm going to see the formula even more, and it's going to become kind of pestering. Sometimes syndication will just kill an interest in a show, even if it's still current. Like, I'm not as big on the Big Bang Theory anymore because I've watched the reruns too many times.
Yeah.
If I had just watched the episodes as they aired, it might be different. But and I know what we talked about this show coming up, and I said, really? The show is going to have a spinoff with the teaching staff, but they're going to be on the current show and then the later show, so that we don't get to really see a growth for them because we know where they wind up. I always have a problem with time travel stories for that. It just seemed really odd. Plus, it takes place in the 90s and isn't fresh off the boat. Also, already a 90s series for ABC at the moment.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even break any new ground. It's just more of kind of the same from two different directions. Mm-hmm. And just in general, I didn't think it was that funny. I like Tim Meadows a lot. I like the guy who plays the coach. They're great on the Goldbergs, especially as their characters. And on this, it just didn't seem to do anything particularly humorous. Like, maybe I'd have to go back and rewatch the pilot for the Goldbergs to see if it was that funny from the very beginning. And since this is a pilot and a spinoff, it has a couple strikes against it normally. But it didn't appeal to me. I don't think it would go on DVR.
So because I did watch it, and actually this was going to be mine, but then I'm like, you know what? Let's do something a little different here, and let's finish your review of the thing I'm going to talk about. But I did enjoy it. I tend to give a lot of leeway to things, but I heard that this is not going to be picked up.
I kind of believe it.
But like this was even before it was like released. Like they did I think they aired it for that second shot. I mean, it's I didn't mind it.
That's exactly it. I didn't mind it, but I didn't love it. I didn't even really care for it. It was so utterly forgettable. It was standard ABC fare, but with the ABC funny shows, some of them stand out.
Yeah.
You know, I am at this point, we're watching the middle till the end, and I feel like it's definitely had its highs and lows, but I think that they're kind of crushing it in this last season because they need to and because they get to go out knowing what's coming up. I think the Goldbergs is very good. I love Blackish.
Yeah.
But there are other ones that I see and I catch episodes here and there. Like Fresh Off the Boat, I don't think is terrific. I watch it and it's fine. It's if it's on in the background. Mm-hmm. Same with American Mom.
Yeah, American Mom,
American Housewife, or
American
whatever
Housewife,
it is.
Yeah.
I expected that show to be so much better. The two leads are terrific in other things, and in this, they're just sort of, it's the same stuff that we've seen so much before, and maybe because of the cattiness of the character, it's less appealing. And this was even below those to me. It's like I watched it once, and I'm like, well, I'm probably never going to look at this again. Maybe it's just because it's got too much of a pedigree that has to ride off of with the Goldbergs and
yeah. So the hope with this was it did get shot down from ABC at first. They decided to give it a shot. It's called 19-something spinoff, or the 1990-something spinoff. It's also called Schooled. That's what it'll be on IMDb. The quote that they have in here from the Goldbergs creator, Adam Goldberg, is it's airing as a regular episode, as a spin-off special, or quote-unquote spin-off special, and hopefully people won't be too confused, says the Goldbergs creator, Adam Goldberg. We just thought a spin-off was a slam dunk. It tested higher than the Goldbergs pilot, and we were excited about taking two of the most popular side characters and spinning them off on their own show. It had all the elements, all the nostalgia I do well.
Man, I'd be more into a JTP show.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a family show. ABC wanted something of a workplace comedy show and picked up The Mayor, which has then been canceled. And yeah. So basically, it sounds like they aired this for a couple reasons. The other reason being because of the fact that there's quite a few spinoffs going on right now. You have Grownish over at Freeform, which is a Blackish spinoff, which has Dion Cole and Yara Shahidi doing double duty now with that, because where she's sort of been written off because she's at college, she's still going to probably going to make appearances, be more recurring character over on the Goldbergs on Blackish, but he still appears fairly regularly on both, and he's, I believe, number 2 in the credits, in the opening credits for Grownish. Then you got Young Sheldon, which I'm okay with. So, and that's where ABC came back and was like, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." And he looks at it this way. Adam Goldberg looks at it this way: if enough people liked it, it where it has enough ratings to where it's going to get developed at ABC, great. Or if they're like, well, maybe ABC Family's a better form, or not ABC Family, Freeform's a better place for it, then okay. Or there's the third option of Sony doing something, because Sony is the producers, the production company that does the Goldbergs, so that they can do something with it there too. So it is one of those things that it could go somewhere.
It needs, man, I don't know. It feels like CSI spun off, and it's not even that this is CSI Miami, which became venomously awful as time went on. But it feels like it went straight to CSI Cyber. It just like the quality is just not there. Maybe CSI New York. Maybe it's one of those things that like people just forgive it that it exists, and like, fuck it, it's Thursday. Who the hell says anything on right now at 10 o'clock? I'll leave it on while I'm waiting for fucking Colbert to start. I just, I didn't want it to suck. I didn't see the promise of the premise of it. It's weird to me to do the time jump to the 90s with characters that are in the regular show. And like, it's not like we're going to get to see Adam show up in a cameo because, hey, Adam, did you have like Gary Coleman syndrome? Why are you still looking 15? Even though it's been 10-ish something years since whatever. I felt like it tried to push the best that it could from the show that it was stealing from, and didn't do enough to be its own thing, and wasn't funny enough to be interesting.
Yeah.
And that was too many strikes for me.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a thing that you talked about, what, 4 years ago? 3-4 years ago?
I don't know. It's been that long. It's only like 6 issues, man. But
well, 5 issues, but you talked a while back ago about, and this is 4 kids walk into a bank. Now, I think I might have mentioned this last week that I was reading it, but since then I've finished it. The one thing I will give is the writer is Matthew Robinson, I believe. He's the guy who's writing the Phoenix Resurrection over at Marvel.
Matthew Rosenberg is the writer.
Yeah.
And Tyler Boss is the illustrator.
Yeah, Tyler Boss is the illustrator.
And it's published by Black Mask Studios.
Yep. All that stuff there. Originally published last November was the trade paperback. And this is one of the things, like, the premise is really basic. You have a girl and her 3 best friends that they, live in this small town, everything's fine. And then these guys come into her house and apparently are her dad's friends and bring him in to rob a bank, sort of blackmail him into robbing a bank. And that's where she goes, we're going to rob it before them to help dad out. Stuff develops as it goes on. I'm going to be a little vague here for Corey because I know you want to finish reading it.
I would like to.
Yeah. And it's definitely something that, oh my gosh, it was really good. I love the art. The art style honestly reminded me of Matt Fraction and David Aja's Hawkeye. It has that, where it's not super detailed with the art, like with the art style, but it's, it's like more flat works, and you don't really get a lot of depth to the character, like in physically to the character, not like story wise. But it's really cool. I love how every issue starts with the kids in their game world. So the first issue started with them as their Dungeons and Dragons characters, and then it went to them playing with their drone outside and doing RC cars and stuff like that. But it does it in the epic way that you thought of it when you were a kid playing outside. Like, you're not, just sitting here driving, with your remote controlled car. You're in the car driving, when you're doing the donuts, you're, and all that stuff. That's how it starts out here. And then it goes boom into the story, into reality. The ending, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more like explained with it, just because it's a certain part where they don't say what exactly happens. But I love how it ended too. Like, there's just like a little bit with the wrapping up of things that I'm like, time here, what happened, and stuff like that. But yeah, it is so good. I highly recommend it. It's because Black Mask Studios, that's a really independent publisher, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of those things that it was not well known when we ordered it, and I think we had to get reorders when I was still working in the comic shop because it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a low ordered book because people never heard of it. People didn't really know the creators that well. They didn't know anything about it. And then all of a sudden it came in and it started to get buzz. Obviously because I reviewed it on our show, but exactly. More likely because it was just really good. And so people started looking for it. It's unfortunate that it's taken this long for it to finish, because buzz can only get you so far if there aren't second issues and third issues and fourth issues coming out. Now that you've got a complete story arc in the trade paperback, which we'll have the links to in our show notes. That's great, because all these people who maybe couldn't find the first issue or, never really got back to it because, it took so long for the next issue to come out, they can pick up the whole thing now. And that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
But it's. I think this is the beauty of comics, especially comics in today, is that you have the opportunity to pick up things almost anytime you want. If I don't know if it's available through Comixology or anything, it seems like it's something that would be eventually, but at least you can get copies off of Amazon or your local comic shop, which we always prefer, and you can read it at your leisure. You don't have to now wait for the thing to do it, and that's terrific. And these people put in a lot of hard work. However long it took, they sat there and they made a great story and they made great art and they put it together, and now they get to show this as an accomplishment of something that they finished. That's fantastic. So good on them. I'm glad that you really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I was able to encourage you to try it out in the first place.
Yeah. And yes, it is available on Comixology.
Excellent.
You can do the series or the graphic novel. It's such a good book. It is well worth the read. It's a quick read too. I mean, it's not, I think each issue is 25 pages. So, I mean, and you go through it really quick as you're reading this. It's, boom, done. Get the story, and then you're in, you're out.
And just for people who are wondering, is this comic for me? And the issue that I read at the time, especially the way that starts out with the D&D stuff, it reminded me very much of Stranger Things, which had just started or gone through its first season around that time. There was also another book that we were reading around the same time called Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan.
Yep.
I would put this up next to that as the type of story and stuff you'd be reading. The young characters, but aren't really acting like kids. I mean, there are kids, but they do it with intelligence and personality and stuff that you like to see. So it's kind of like Goonies. It's that kind of thing or as we were talking about earlier, the movie, where the kids are the stars and their thought process and stuff. You kind of enjoy going on that journey with them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's not really much more that can be said about that. So that's going to do it for the ElseViews, and we will be right back with the ElseWords. And we are back with the ElseWords. This is our big discussion topic of the week, and we are going to talk comics and movies, but not mention Dad's Comics or Marvel Comics. We're not going to talk DC or Marvel with this. We are going to talk the other publishers that have been in the news with.
We're going to see if somebody else can make a comic superhero movie work.
Yeah.
Or a comic franchise movie.
So we're going to hit the first bit here is, and because these are all stories that are short, but they're tied together. So DMG Entertainment has acquired all of Valiant Comics. They are the people behind my pick 2-3 weeks ago of Quantum and Woody, and also, Exo Man of War. They've done stuff like Faith, Ninjak, and gosh, there's a whole bunch of others in there as well.
Faith is actually, I've been seeing some clothing line based off of her image on ThinkGeek.
Yeah, so that's I think that's part of this thing here. But the big thing with this is basically DMG, run by founder and CEO Dan Mintz, already had 57%. They just basically bought out the other 43%. Like, yeah, why not?
DMG has acquired Valiant, the company. Valiant has gone through quite a few hands. We've talked a little bit before about in the 90s, they got acquired by Acclaim and were republishing and starting out a lot of books. And that's when characters like Quantum Woody came about. The Valiant characters, some of the earlier ones, I don't even think are at Valiant anymore. They were Gold Key characters that have been picked up by another company, Turok and Solar and things. But there's always a chance that they might wind up back in the same universe again. And this is interesting because Valiant Comics right now are seen as being very, very good. I don't hear anybody talking about Valiant Comics and not saying that they really enjoy them and have compared them highly favorably over a lot of the Marvel output and even the DC output, up at least until DC had their Rebirth stuff. So no one's excited to see anything change at Valiant itself. They're curious to see how much is going to affect the comics day to day versus what seems to be the bigger thing, which is how do we get these characters up on the screen? And there's been a little bit of that going forward already. I know Ninjak was supposed to have an online series. X-O Man of War, I think, is one of the ones that's been picked up for a movie at some point. This is the company that was putting a lot of stake into Valiant already, saying, hey, we really believe in this. We just want to own you outright so we can take care of all this. We'll bankroll everything, but we'll also get the gains from it in the long run. And that makes a certain degree of sense. What I'm not hearing so far with the Valiant stuff that's been announced is a shared universe thing necessarily. It seems like the Ninjak show is its own entity versus X-O versus Bloodshot, whatever else comes out. If they do a Quantum and Woody, these things standing on their own. I feel like when I read Archer and Armstrong, there were strong ties to some of the other characters, like Eternal Warrior, I think was a big part of it. I think he was actually a relative of Armstrong. So I don't know how much it can stay separate if you want to fully explore these characters. But then it took a lot of years of Michael Keaton Batman movies and Christopher Reeve Superman movies and Wonder Woman TV series before we finally started seeing some of those characters team up on screen. It was a lot of years of separate Spider-Man movies and X-Men movies and everything else. Oh, wait, those are mostly still separate. But still, you get what I'm saying is that the shared universe thing, while it feels like that's everything right now because Marvel has done it so much and DC's finally gotten around to it, it's still kind of new. It's still not a thing that we're used to having. So maybe it takes a few shots for Valiant to do that.
And this is where I honestly have to give them credit, because they're doing this, getting this stuff out there because they have this benefit of the fact that no one really knows a lot about them. A lot of people don't know about, Quantum and Woody or, Harbinger or, a lot of these properties. So they're like, well, let's just do these good. So for example, they already have in the works right now, Harbinger and Bloodshot are set over at Sony, with Bloodshot being having Vin Diesel attached to star. Quantum and Woody, which is a favorite of CEO Dan Mincer, I think it's Dan. He likes that show. Is in development as a TV show with the Russo brothers, Getaway Productions. And then Dr. Mirage is also set to be a TV series with CBS Studios and the CW network. So they're doing all these things in these other properties, in these other mediums. Like, I think what was it? Ninjak versus the Valiant universe was going to be the online thing, because of the fact that, like, I remember hearing about that because it had Jason David Frank from Power Rangers attached with it. I think he was going to play Ninjak.
I believe that was the case. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of these things, like, with it, and it's with this and with all this stuff. I'm like, all the stories we're here that we're gonna have. It's like, if it's gonna be good, great. I'd love to see a Quantum and Woody TV series. I'd love to see an Archer and Armstrong's, movie franchise.
I really enjoyed Archer and Armstrong. That's one that I would love to see. I would probably like to see it as a Netflix series or something.
Yeah.
Because the stories have a depth and length to them that I think works.
And so, I think it's really cool. The other part is that is a rumor, but this all stems from Mark Millar signing with Netflix. So Millar World is owned by Netflix now, I believe was how the deal went. And
Mark Millar, we know Mark from doing things like Kick-Ass and Wanted and The Kingsman.
Yep.
And he's had several high-profile movies come out, including two of them that have had sequels. So he's done very well. Most of his stuff was being published either through Image or some of the stuff originally Marvel, but they were all creator-owned properties, along with his co-creators, the artists on the books, which is kind of the big thing. Now, the properties that have already come out, meaning Hit Girl and Kick-Ass and Kingsman and probably Wanted, are not included in this. But he's had a lot of other properties that have existed that are under this bannerhead that Netflix, basically, they bought out Mark Millar's creativity, the stuff that he's developed before that wasn't already sold or being in development with another company, and stuff going forward. He's going to keep continuously making new ideas for them, and it's exclusive to Netflix. So he's had books that are not really superhero based, like American Jesus, which was originally called Chosen. But he's had a lot of other things like Starlight, I think was one that was kind of a future Flash Gordon thing of Flash Gordon has retired on Earth to marry the Eve Arden, I think is the character name. And she's now passed. And so he wants to come out of retirement and go back into saving the universe and stuff. His kids don't believe any of his stories were real. So it's a little bit like The Incredibles, a little bit Don Quixote, but it's a sweet story. He also did another one about a superpowered character that was kind of, I don't know if he was challenged, but he was a little bit simple-minded. And it was like he would go around and he would try to do one good thing every day. And I never read the actual book, but it was one of those things that would come up. And like Millar went through a phase of being kind of overly grotesque, hyper-violent stories. And then he started doing stuff that was a little bit closer to being sweet and feel-good stories. And it's the thing is that there's a Millar that I find appealing, and then there's a Millar that I find very, very unappealing. His work, not him personally. And so it just depends on what you get. But he keeps making big ideas. Now, some of his things are the kinds of stuff that you go, oh, it's this mixed with this. It's the X-Men as spies. It's Batman if he was a villain. It's those sorts of things. So, and those books will probably be some of the first ones that are in development. It'll depend on what kind of air that he has to it. I don't know, again, if this is a shared universe thing or if this is just Millar's works in their own stories, because a lot of these concepts don't work together as shared. You don't see the Kingsmen crossing over with Kick-Ass. You could, conceivably, but they feel like they're two separate ideas that wouldn't necessarily equal out to being in the same room together. But I wouldn't put it past them. Wanted, same sort of thing. Wanted and Kingsman probably could exist. Mm-hmm. The perfect assassin against the perfect spies. Maybe. It just sort of depends. But it does show that Netflix sees the possibility of comic books and superheroes outside of the Marvel house, especially when Marvel could very well exit Netflix at some point with the whole Disney deal thing.
So this, and the article is coming from Bleeding Cool. They say that all the titles from Millar World, with the exceptions of Kick-Ass, Kingsman, and Hit Girl, which those will be continued to be published by Image Comics, will be published by Netflix Comics. So it's part of it is I think they've changed Millar World to Netflix Comics, which is a smart move, because if it does take off like they're hoping, calling something Millar World or Millar World is going to sort of feel exclusionary in that regard. Well,
I think what it is that Netflix, and this is the other part, is that it's not just Netflix Comics isn't an imprint in Netflix of here's where we take comics properties and put them on the screen. Netflix Comics is actually comic books.
Yes.
This is the bigger story, is that Netflix is saying, oh, yeah, all of these properties that we've just gotten rights to, well, we still want to see them published as comics, both the old stuff and new stuff. And where is that stuff going to wind up? Who's going to be the publisher? So they're making their own publishing imprint. And the rumor is that it's going to actually be put out by Dark Horse.
Yeah, so it's weird because with how it sounds like from the author of the article, that it's going to initially be done through Dark Horse, and then once they get their leggings, then they'll do it themselves or something.
Yeah, but Malibu was kind of like that, or maybe it was Image was done by Malibu. There was some kind of deal where the company started up and
Image was through Malibu.
Yeah, and then they got their legs, and then they went off and they started doing the stuff on their own. But it was like we don't have all the startup to make this happen just on its own. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of skill and stuff. You have people who already do this, so we're just going to pay you guys to do this for us until we're ready to take it and run with it. And Dark Horse is a very good company to use. Dark Horse is a premier publisher who a few years ago, unfortunately, lost some of their biggest rights to some of the stories they were doing because Marvel acquired or Disney acquired Marvel, but also they acquired Star Wars. And so Dark Horse for years had published Star Wars comics, and all those Star Wars comics got pulled to go to Marvel to publish instead, and change the continuity of a lot of things at the same time.
Yep.
So that was a big blow to Dark Horse, but they didn't fold up and die. They started doing other stuff.
No, yeah, it looks like they've lost Star Wars IDW, Yen, Line Webtoons, and Scholastic. And then they also just, lost Conan to Marvel.
Yeah, Conan's gone back and forth a few times. I don't see Conan as being like the big thing, but what I'm more worried about is some of the other properties that Dark Horse has published over the years has been like Predator and Aliens and RoboCop.
Yeah.
And Predator and Aliens are both Fox properties, and who just bought out Fox?
So you heard it here first, folks. The whole reason why Disney is buying all these things is so they could fuck with Dark Horse.
But isn't there also a story that I think I saw this week that Dark Horse is going to be publishing Frozen comics?
That wouldn't surprise me because here ABC has their own publisher.
But that's the thing.
Because I think they're still doing like Darkwing Duck or Donald Duck or one of them comics too. I think. So
a few years ago, Boom Studios had the rights to the Disney characters, not like ownership, but they were publishing Darkwing Duck, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, that kind of stuff. And the Muppet comics, which were excellent. The Roger Language stuff was so good. And then the Disney deal happened with them buying Marvel, and so they pulled all those licenses away. But then Marvel doesn't do kids comics. They just don't know how anymore. They don't have the people. They have plenty of people who are like, oh yeah, I can write the shit out of a Star Wars book, but I can't make heads or tails out of writing a fucking Goof Troop series. They've tried a couple things here and there where they did, like someone did a series of the Dragon Figment.
Yeah, that was Jim Zub.
Yep. But overall, Marvel and Disney just have not mixed.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, big screw to Boom, who, again, had to go and find and acquire a whole bunch of other stuff to do. They made a lot of their own stuff, doing stuff with Lumberjanes and things, but they also had started doing the stuff with Adventure Time and a bunch of the
Warriors.
Yep, Bravest Warriors, Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, a lot of the Cartoon Network stuff. Which is weird because a lot of those properties owned by Warner Brothers, DC,
Yeah.
So it's very weird. But take a company that knows what they're doing. That's the thing, is that you pull the rug out from under this company that's doing great stuff with your Disney properties to pull them back, and then didn't do anything with them. Couldn't do anything with them. So Dark Horse to release original comic series featuring Disney's Frozen. So again, Marvel not going to do a Frozen comic, but we have this. It seems like we should make Frozen comics. Who could do it? Well, they went to Dark Horse. So there's still a working relationship somewhere between Disney and Dark Horse that's able to do stuff. It's just a question of, where do they feel the properties are better served at? Is Predator a good Marvel property, or is it a good license it out to somebody else to do it property?
The next bit is sort of a twofer, but it's Rob Liefeld's Extreme Universe is coming to the big screen. So this is sort of the other end of the spectrum.
This is closer to Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
Some people would say, well, it's just like Marvel except no feet. But in this case, this is all the characters already coexist.
Yeah.
All the characters have crossovers in the books. The big issue with this is that the most well-known book by Extreme Studios and by Rob Liefeld is Youngblood, and Youngblood is not part of this deal because it's already been put into a production promise at another company, I think, over the years. So, but all the other things in the Extreme Universe that Rob has created and had a lot of people work on, Mark Millar being one of them, and oh God, who else? Oh, your friend from The Walking Dead,
Robert Kirkman.
Yeah, Robert Kirkman has written stuff for Extreme Studios. Alan Moore famously did the Judgment Day comic and then did a really terrific run on Supreme. So all these other characters, Bloodstrike, Blood Wolf, a lot of bloods. You're going to hear a lot of bloods in these. Rejects, Kaboom. Hopefully one of my favorite books that I loved, which was New Men. These things all available to this new on-screen universe.
So here's
Akiva Goldsman.
Yeah, here's the bigger part with this, because I mean, you have Akiva Goldsman, who is setting up the writers' room for this universe. There's the producer joining him with Graham King, and then Chinese outfit Fundamental Films are all partnering on this franchise based on the comic creations. That's where I feel like this is going to be a hit, because I mean, the No, I'm not incredibly familiar with the Extreme Comics line, but it's the superheroes, but they're more edgier, because it was
They're not
outside
just
of.
edgy; they're extreme.
Well,
So
I wanted to avoid that. They're
right, I know,
extreme.
but this is the whole point. Whenever somebody makes those quotes about the '90s and everything's extreme, that's exactly what this was. This is Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld created X-Force, created Deadpool and Cable in New Mutants, and then took New Mutants and finished that book out and spun it off into X-Force, and was part of the exodus of Marvel, of all these high-end, hugely paid, hugely fanned creators, particularly the artists, and they went off and they said, we're not going to work for you anymore. We're going to go and start our own company and do our own shit and own our shit. And then they went over to DC and they said, hey, just so you heard, we've left Marvel. And DC's like, yeah, we can't wait to get you on our books. We're not getting on your books. We're going and creating our own shit. So just like a giant middle finger to both of the biggest companies in comics ever. And so that's kind of like what his whole line was doing Extreme books. When Extreme left Image Comics, now it was the first launch book was Youngblood at Image. But when Extreme left Image Comics because of a falling out between Rob and some of the other creators, he had to rebrand it. So he created Awesome Comics. So it goes from Extreme to Awesome. There was another one, I can't remember, was like his first spinoff that was like, I'm not leaving Image yet, but I want to do this other thing completely too. And I can't remember what that imprint was. But I think that might have been where Evangeline was from.
Now, wasn't Rob Liefeld 23 at this time?
He was very young when he did the Levi's 501 Blues commercial. My fly is buttoned. Yeah, and so there was maybe a little bit of immaturity, maybe for all the guys there was. But there was also, you go from being a guy who's just going to draw superheroes to being super rich and spending $3 million on a baseball, Todd McFarlane. That was a good investment. You kind of get some chutzpah.
Yeah.
And you also don't necessarily know how to run that kind of business on your own. So the partners all got together and they hired some good people and they did things, but they were all cocky. And so you get that many egos in a room and they're gonna bash heads, and they're gonna, somebody's gonna think they're cooler than everybody else.
So honestly with this, looking at this, I mean, because where I read a little bit of the, what was it Youngblood that relaunched recently with Image?
Youngblood is one of the ones that relaunched recently with Image. They did a really good run with Glory, and there was another one. Oh, Prophet was another one that had some pretty cool relaunch stuff. But Youngblood was probably one of the most recent ones. He also did a couple Kickstarters of Bloodstrike, I think, was one.
Yeah.
And Brigade might have been another.
But I mean, this is one of the things that where I'm not I read a little bit of the first couple issues and I enjoyed the book, the Youngblood book, but at the same time, part of it was I felt like I needed to know a little bit more of the history of Youngblood, and the other part of it was there's a lot of comic books I read, and so it fell low on my list.
Well, that was the point of the relaunch, is that I don't think it was requiring you to know the history as much. And honestly, because there's
I need to know a little bit.
No, you really didn't. And you're probably better off. One, because the original Youngblood series, not big on story. Man, it was all about the dynamic art. It was all about, here's these characters. Oh, look, somebody's head just got blown off. Hey, that guy looks kind of cool. Oh, he's dead. Because it was just all out action all the time. It was never about the plot. Comics at that point in time, and they're getting into this right now with this new DC spin-off line with all these artists as the lead creators. It was basically the artist drew the story and then the writer would come in and fill in the dialogue after. And it was loose plots. It was, here's a plot. Okay, fill out the 24 pages with that plot, and then we'll go back in and we'll make all the stuff work. That was the Marvel style of doing comics. And what happened with the early Image stuff is that there were a lot of cases of the writer didn't really come into play. The artist thought they could write. They thought they could make a cohesive storyline or dialogue, and it didn't always work out that way. Over time, they developed it in better things. Todd McFarlane had guest issues where Neil Gaiman wrote a comic, and oh shit, forgot to fucking pay him like he was supposed to for the creation of Angela, so that didn't work out. Also had issues where Dave Sim came in, where Frank Miller wrote stuff. That was a good move on Todd's part. It gave the book more depth and more gravitas. Jim Lee was very lucky to have Brandon Choi write for Wildcats from the very beginning and develop stories. I think Brandon also wrote the early Stormwatch stuff. Brandon was a decent writer. You know, there was a lot more to the Youngblood, but not the Youngblood, the Wildstorm books at that point than there were some of the other things. I think it was still called Homage at that point. Extreme took a while. When I talk about New Men, the reason why I liked New Men was because the writer on it had some stories that I really dug. I liked his style. That writer was Eric Stephenson, who has long now been the head of Image Comics. I think he was very good, even at that early stage. But like I said, Rob got in bigger names. He got people to start working on the book, like, say, Kurt Busiek was supposed to write Youngblood, Mark Millar. The problem is the books didn't come out, and it was almost always because the art fell behind. I don't think it was ever the writers, although we can definitely say that writers sometimes hold things up. It just seemed like so many times it was, oh, we're launching and it's going to be this big thing. And there were all these promises made, and then the books would just kind of fall the wayside. And that unfortunately still seems to happen with Rob stuff today. There are people who complained about the Kickstarter stuff. It's like, I never got my comics, or when's the next issue coming out, or whatever. I think he always intends the best. And so when he went back to Marvel a couple years ago and was doing stuff at DC, where he was writing a few books and drawing a couple of books at the same time, and he was hitting his deadlines every month, and that was with a lot of editorial interference, it was to kind of prove, hey, I can do this. I think it was as much to prove it to himself as it was to the audience. But in the long run, when it comes to extreme books, there still seems to be things where they fall behind. And that's probably because the business needs to be run by somebody too, and that's not where his expertise is. Rob's a very dynamic creator. As a businessman, he can probably do things too, but when he's got to do them both at the same time, I think it suffers. That said, this is a big deal, not so much because of Rob, although I think there's something to be said, because Rob's the creator of Deadpool, and Deadpool is like on fire right now. Rob's the creator of Cable. Cable is going to be the next big thing in Deadpool, but it's more about the fact that this is someone bought a universe, you know. Yeah. And Akiva Goldsman is the guy who's been doing the Transformers movies for Hasbro, the guy who's been trying to launch the new Hasbro line that mixes the Transformers and G.I. Joe and Visionaries and a couple other properties that don't necessarily make sense together, but he really wants a big shared universe. So Hasbro is maybe not the one to do that. Rob's stuff, which is already all these characters know each other and interact with each other, so that's what we get to draw on, that's probably the way to go, because it's easier to make that stuff happen. I was talking with someone online today. They were talking about the Universal monsters and why they tried to do this Dark Universe stuff with the Mummy, and before that, actually, they tried to do it with Dracula Untold, and they didn't take off. And I said, well, because these characters were never meant to be interactive with each other. You know, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Dracula, the creature from the Black Lagoon. There's only been 3 cases that I can think of where they interacted. It was the Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, which was comedy. It was the Monster Squad, which was comedy. And it was Van Helsing, which wasn't funny how shitty that movie was. So to try to force them into each other because, well, they're Universal monsters, and that's what everybody sees them as, and Universal owns them, so we want to make our own franchise. I just don't know that people are buying into it. Also because the properties are kind of seen as old and quaint at this point. Nobody's freaking out for a new Dracula movie. Nobody's jumping up and down for a new Wolfman. You know, it's not even a werewolf. He's a wolf man. He has nards. We know that.
Wolfman.
Yeah, it's just... So I think Marvel's had the advantage because for 70 years, Captain America knew the Avengers, knew the Fantastic Four, knew the X-Men. DC's had the advantage. They just don't know how to play it. But Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman all have coffee together regularly. And Cal will heat it up when it starts to get cold. And Batman will pay for the extra whipped cream because he's got the bank. A shared universe that pre-exists coming in means that you can make movies into a franchise much easier. Will they be great? I don't know. I have nothing nice to say about the Transformers movies.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it sort of like loses me, is because of that.
But Akiva Goldsman has done so many things. And yeah, some of them are truly awful and some of them aren't bad. And I kind of want to say, isn't he the guy who bought the rights to A God in the Shed by our friend J.F. DeBow?
Hold on.
So
Hold on.
I don't want to shit on this at all, because I really, really, really want A God in the Shed to become my next Netflix series or whatever. I want to see that happen. So we know at least he's got taste. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn of that. I'm pretty sure I've heard JF say that a number of times in different places, either on his writing podcast or on Mind of a Geek. So
Yep.
I really don't think I'm spilling any beans here. Yeah.
No. Yeah, this is on trackingboard.com. Skydance Lands hot manuscript, A God in the Shed from J.F. DuBois with Akiva Goldsman set to produce.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's change your opinions now as you see fit.
I'm not changing my opinions. Like I said, he's done some stuff that I don't like, and he's done some stuff that I probably do like. I don't know his entire list of works, but he's been so prolific. He's done so many different things. You can have a range of awesome to shitty and back again, but he's definitely picked one of my favorite properties in JF stuff. I gotta say, I have a love for the Extreme Universe. It part of it is, yes, it's a lot of, it started out with a lot of kind of copies of Marvel characters or DC characters, like all the Image books did. But I think over time there was something to a lot of those different books that I liked. And I like Rob. I honestly like Rob Liefeld a lot, just as a dude, especially as a family guy. He's a good parent, he's very doting of his kids. His energy is electric. He's fun. He loves comics. He's like the biggest fanboy, and admits it. And he also takes knowledge of his faults, like the Captain America chest 5 times bigger than his head thing. He's taken that joke and run with it. He doesn't mind it. It's like, yeah, it gets old maybe at some points, but he's never been a guy who said, "Oh yeah, I'm better than everybody else." Maybe he said that in private, but he doesn't say that out loud to the fans. And he treats the fans really well. So I like him, and I hope this works out. And Rob, again, if you're out there and you're listening, I just want to write a Kid Supreme story. That's been my dream since the 90s. You don't have to pay me. I'm just glad to do it because I really like that character. I feel like, yes, we've gone long, but we owe it to mention the final thing, which was Luc Besson's EuroCorp. It got picked up by Netflix, I think. Yeah, we had a little bit of talk about this at before the show. I haven't seen Valerian. We all know the Fifth Element. I've seen a lot of Besson stuff that's a little bit more out there, from things like The Professional or The Big Blue, which was a movie about deep sea divers who don't have equipment. And Nikita. I've never seen the original movie La Femme Nikita. I saw Point of No Return. That was definitely a mistake. So I think Harvey Keitel took over the part of Jacques Renault in that, but I don't remember his name now. But so yeah, Besson is one of those people who doesn't seem to sell tickets, but when people see his stuff, Jean Renault, thank you. When people see his stuff later, they wind up enjoying it, talking about it. So he's not a big blockbuster guy, but he does tell a good story, or at the very least, his stuff is so visually stimulating that you love seeing it. You love looking at it on the screen. The Fifth Element is such a weird movie, and it, in so many ways, it shouldn't work. And I don't know if it actually necessarily did. When it came out in the theater, I don't remember what we went to see instead, but I know we didn't go to see that. But a year later, when it was out on video or on cable, we're like, holy shit, this movie is excellent. And now everybody talks about it like it's one of the biggest things ever. And it kind of is. So I'm glad to see Besson get the ability to do stuff going forward, and someone picked up his stuff, Netflix picking up his stuff. Netflix is great because they don't necessarily need to believe in your product as much as they believe in you as a creator, and they just let you go and do it, and then They put it in front of the audience and let the audience decide, hey, I want to watch this, even if it's just out of morbid curiosity. I think it goes in the same boat as Bright, which was the recent Netflix movie that a lot of people shit on for the story or whatever, but many, many people watched, and we're going to get more of it. I feel like you get this stuff in front of people and they'll see it and they'll go, okay, maybe this isn't the best thing in the world, but I can watch it and I can rewatch it. And maybe I'll warm to it over time, a couple times through, and it'll get either more interesting or funnier or whatever, or it'll just be like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I'll watch it out of a morbid curiosity over and over again until I love it and becomes my favorite thing ever. And there is a possibility that more Valerian can happen because of this deal. And a lot of people, everybody I know who saw it seemed to really like it. It's just nobody saw it.
Yeah, I think that's the problem right there, is that no one saw it in theaters.
I also think that a lot of people had problems with the leads, is that they just didn't have chemistry at all. That's the complaint that I heard the most. But I haven't watched it yet. You've watched it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and I don't know, I liked it. I'll put it this way.
You liked it.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
I liked it, Mikey. Yeah.
So
if you
basically that's 4 different kind of comic book to film movies or deals that are happening, with Besson doing stuff with Valerian. All these things are big possible production jumps that we'll have to see, what happens in a post Marvel Cinematic Universe world. Are these good moves? Are these bizarre moves? Is Mark Millar the right guy to throw your money at? Maybe. He's had some good success in film so far. Is Rob Liefeld, based off of his only creation that's made it up to the big screen? Yeah, probably. But is that because he's a Marvel character or because he's a Rob character? And with the Valiant stuff, well, I mean, that's basically like Marvel starting 20 years ago instead of 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, yeah, definitely. So with that, I think we're going to leave it up to you guys. We're going to throw this over to you. And if you want to reply back, let us know, what you're looking forward to with this, what you think of all the things that we talked about today. You can leave us a voicemail at 805-328-3966, or you could email us mail@ElseNerds.com. You can also subscribe to us over at gncast.com/subscribe. And if you do a search for Galactic Netcasts on Facebook, Twitter, all that, you will find the mothership of Galactic Network. That's also where on Twitter where you'll find us. We're at ElseNerds. You can find our producers. B is at Beatmaster80. Evan is at Mr_Fusion. I can be found, or Sean Burns, sorry, I'll do Sean first. Can be found at SBurnsPA. And I can be found at that Gregor. Corey, where can people find the works of one Levi Strauss? Krauss, sorry. Damn it.
Levi Strauss is the jeans. It's funny because he's gotten called out for his name and people always think it's an alias. It's not, man. That's just Levi. You can probably find him on a farm somewhere, but no, you can find his comics at donuscomics.com, which is a great place to go. He also has a Tumblr, which I don't know where that is. If you go to Tumblr and look up Donuts Comics, you'll probably find it. If you look up Levi Krauss, he's very talented. And like me, he's maybe fallen a little bit behind on putting stuff up on the internet. I hope to get back to it. I keep saying that at some point I'll live up to my potential.
Yes.
My mom says I'm pretty.
And the final thing to be said is this has been a Don't Tell Glenn production. We will see you next week.
Or else.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.